So good morning everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on the Van Diemen Gold Project hosted by International Star. So joining us today are Mike Shea, CEO of International Star, Howard Metzler, our VP of Operations, our mining consultant Joe Bardswich, and I'm Barbara Carroll, VP of Project Development. What I'd like to do now is introduce Mike Shea, CEO of International Star.
Thank you, Barbara, and welcome everybody to the International Star Conference call. Before we get started, I'd like to do the obligatory safe harbor statement. Barb, if you would. I'm not going to go into this, but everybody is familiar with the forward-looking statements. Barb, next slide. We have a pretty comprehensive agenda for today. I'm going to start with some opening comments. I'll then turn it over to Howard Metzler to describe the history of the Van Diemen and surrounding mining district, followed by Barb Carroll, description of the project status. Next will be Joe Bardswich, who will go through the permitting process. Number 5, I'll describe what my views are on the gold market. I'll wrap it up with some summary comments, and then we'll open it up for questions and answers. Barb, please, next slide. And again. As you can see, this is the Van Diemen project. It's located in the northwest section of Arizona, hinging on the borders of California and Nevada. International Star is a junior mining company with claims in the Black Mountains in northwest Arizona. Its primary focus is to bring the Van Diemen project into production, thereby generating cash flow to enable growth and sustainability. Next slide, please. What you're looking at here is the Van Diemen claims. You can see that we have numerous claims, some of which are outside the boundaries of the main mining claims, and Howard will get into the importance of having those later in the presentation. The points that I'd like to make is that Arizona combined with Nevada are the premier mining jurisdictions in the United States, and particularly northwest Arizona is very mining friendly, has excellent site access. It's 50 miles northwest of Kingman, Arizona. It has a population of approximately 28,000 people. It's well developed, has excellent infrastructure and a workforce. Historic resource is 34,000 ounces of near surface gold. Next slide. Mining is a process. As you can see, this has been going on for close to 100 years. Many companies have done exploration work on the property. Again, Howard will get into that, but names like Freeport, Fisher Watt, etc. And you can see that it has been a start-stop process, but since we've taken this over in 2013, we've made substantial progress towards developing it and moving towards production. Next slide, please. What we've put together is what I believe to be a high-quality management team. Myself with the finance background, Howard and Barb with many years of geological experience with major companies. And as we previously announced recently, the addition of Joe Bardswich as our mining consultant. And Joe is invaluable to us in the fact that he recently, and he's general manager of the Moss mine about 40 miles south of us, that just went into a pilot phase and has poured roughly $5 million worth of gold so far. What I'd like to do is, through this presentation, which I believe is long overdue, is I want to bring everybody shareholders, the investment community, up to speed. Let them see what we've been doing, what we plan on doing, the timelines associated with such, so that we can provide complete transparency to the investment community. I'd be the first to acknowledge that the share price is well below what we think the project is valued at, which I'll go into later. But what you're looking at in the Van Diemen is a bona fide deposit, expanded, near-term production. We have a solid team, and I'm very, very pleased to be able to show you what the money that we have raised has gone towards. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Howard Metzler to give you a history of the Van Diemen and the surrounding mining district.
Thank you, Mike. This country, like most of the West, they started exploration in the late 1800s. The gold bug mine was officially located in about 1892, and the Van Diemen itself around the 1930s. But not a lot of development was done because there was no nearby mill sites. Most of the ore was high grade. It had to be all hauled 50, 60 miles to the south to the Catherine mine. So there was a lot of little stuff, but nothing of any size. Modern exploration started in the 1960s with the copper porphyry guys looking for copper, primarily about 3 miles to the northeast of the Van Diemen itself. Cerro was in there as early as at least 1969, and while the drilling was concentrated to the northeast, they drilled holes through the whole area, including close by to the Van Diemen. And there were some big name copper companies: Bear Creek, New Jersey Zinc, AMAX, Quintana, Gulf, worked there through up into the late 70s, and they didn't find any copper porphyries, but they were looking. The development at the Van Diemen itself started in 1980 with Pacific Cypress. They did mapping and sampling. And Selco came in 1983 and actually did a pretty big program with mapping, sampling, and drilling. And we had Red Dog came in while they had the property and did a little bit of drilling. But the real development of the property started with Fisher Watt in 1985. They're the people that went in and really figured out the geology and did the work. And they mapped, sampled, drilled, leach tested, did all the things, and they developed a historic resource. Frisco was in with them on a JV for a little bit in '85. Mostly did some aircraft drilling and a bulk sample test on one area. In 1986, Arizona Star came in under a full-fledged joint venture with Fisher Watt, and they took everything along until things kind of cooled off, and the claims were rolled over to La Cuesta in 1990. And La Cuesta has some of the geologists that worked for Fisher Watt during the previous years with it, and they had subleased out to Tona Gold, and then International Star came in 2011 and have been working on the property since then. And that's not the only development in the area, but that's specific. Within the general area, Western States was in there, Santa Fe was in there, Chevron was to the south, Kylo Noon was down there. And I don't really know everybody that was in there, but it was an area that attracted quite a bit of attention in the 80s. And one part of the concept of this whole process has been to try to figure out what's going on with the rest of this area. And there's other mines that have potential to go along with the development of the Van Diemen. The Pope is to the north. It's got an approximately 6,000 ton heap leach pad on it. The Porter to the south has probably 10,000 tons on an old heap leach pad. The Gold Bug is a high-grade mine that may have tails or dumps that can run. And we don't control those mines, but they are in the immediate vicinity. And the Liberty has 5,000 to 10,000 tons of dump that the initial assays look pretty good on. And we do have the claims at the Liberty for the dump. So anyway, there are properties in there that have potential to develop in the immediate area of the Van Diemen, and we contact, generally we know who the owners are. But if we can get a permitted heap leach site, there are other mines in the general area, and we have a toll potential diagram, which is a 50-mile radius of the Van Diemen, where some of we have the Liberty dump, the pad at the Pope, the pad and the dumps at the Porter, tails and dumps at the Gold Bug. There are 10,000 reported 10,000 tons of mockingbird tails to the south, and they do assay quite well. But in the general area, to the south, 30 miles maybe by road, there's the Gold Door Klondike that has a reported resource. No resources we know of are 43101 compliant, but they are reported resources. And about 40 miles to the east, the Cyclopic has reported resources. And to the south, about 50 miles, 40, 50 miles to Portland, that was a mine that Western States actually put 1 million tons on a pad back in the 80s. And that was done by Western States, and it's a private company, so we have no data, but the reported grade was 0.07. And then farther to the south, along the road from Kingman to Bullhead City, the Arabian is there with reported reserves, and also Secret Pass is close by with reported reserves. So there is some potential in the area to do toll milling for other properties, because while trucking is expensive, most of these properties in this country have zones of higher grade material that may well take the trucking costs. And that covers the history of the district, and I turn it over to Barbara.
All right. Thanks, Howard. So what I'd like to do next is I'd like to review with everyone what we've accomplished to date and let you know where we currently are in the project. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over briefly what we've already completed, because we've covered that recently in a radio program and we've posted that on our website. And what I would like to stress, though, is that this process is a step-by-step procedure. So with each one of these steps, they build into the results. Then we build on the results from the previous step to move the project forward. So the first thing that we did was we did confirm the historic resource that was done back in the 80s of 34,000 contained ounces of gold using the drill hole information that was available to us at the time. So that gave us confidence to move forward to the next step. And the next step was to confirm the assay results. And how we did that was we re-assayed some of the existing pulps that were available to us from the drill holes we compared the 2014 assay results that we got from Skyline to the 1986 historic assays from Chemex's lab. We were able to show a 98% correlation between the samples. So that confirmed the values obtained from Chemex for the historic values. So we have confidence that the values, we can reproduce them and we can move forward. So moving forward, what we needed to do was we needed to see how well the rock was going to react, and we did that with metallurgical testing. It showed that the ore was amenable to a simulated heap leach cyanide treatment at an 80% minus 1 inch feed size. The column leach test gold recovery was almost 70% in 74 days of leaching. So we moved forward from there. We now know that we're comfortable with the assays, with the historic assays. We now know how much gold we can get out of the rock. The other thing that we did was acid-base accounting testing. And what that did was it indicated that the material that we're going to be processing has no potential for acid generation due to the net neutralizing capability and the low pyrite content. So this eliminates acid mine water discharge as a concern, and it's going to make the permitting easier. So what we are currently working on, the permitting. What we're doing is we're updating the permits to reflect the heap leach operation, not a pilot plant. The permitting requirements for a 10,000 ton heap leach are only slightly less costly than one for a 1 million ton heap, with the estimated cost for the pilot being about $500,000 versus $700,000 for the full permitting. And the other thing is the permitting period is almost as time consuming. So roughly speaking, to do the pilot first and then a heap would almost double the cost and double the time. And Joe's going to expand on this topic later in the presentation. The other thing that we have done is we have been able to obtain additional information from the Arizona Geologic Survey, and this has allowed us to expand our knowledge base. And again, we will be discussing this later in the presentation. We've also worked up a preliminary pit design, and we'll show that to you in just a little bit. So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to switch into Discover 3D, which is the software we're using to manage and model the project. So you need to bear with me for just a minute while I switch over, and we'll see if we can get this to work for us. All right, so hopefully everyone can see this. And what we have here on the screen is the surface of the Van Deemen project itself. And so you can see that we've got the drainage coming through here. We've got some surface topography that we do need to deal with. These yellow dots are the current holes that we have that are in the resource, and there are about 144 of them that we have that we're working with. So what we can do is we can take a look at this, and what we did with this was we created a resource based on the assay values from the drill holes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off the surface here, and so that you can see. So here, and I think you can see this, it may be a little bit fine. You can see the existing drill holes. What we did with them is then this is the block model that was created from the assays, and the gold grades are shown with different colors, with the yellows and oranges being a lower grade. The values that are in red are higher grade. So you can see that what we have here is we have a deposit, and actually it's made up of several different areas that we need to take into account. The other thing, and I think we'll be stressing this a little bit more as we go on, I'm just moving this so that you can look down on this, and you'll see that there's a lot of space in here where we really don't have information. Over here, right now what I'm going to do, this area over here, right here, is our area 4. This is what we'll primarily be working with to start our mining. This area here would be called area 3, and this area over here is area 2. So what we have is we have a lot of area that is undefined. We don't really know whether it's mineralized or not, and that makes it a bit difficult to try and create a mine design and to design pits and know how much we have there to actually mine. So this is why it's important that we were able to find some additional information, and I'll show you that in a minute. So let's see, Joe, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the stuff that we were doing?
Barbara, could you bring back the topography slide for a minute?
I probably can. Hold on just a minute. You want this shot here? Okay.
Having a look at the mountain in the background here, the rugged peaks and cliffs, etc. That would certainly be a lot tougher building a mine up on there. But as you can see, the drill holes that deposit are down in relatively gentle topography. The front end here, we can slash that off with a relatively low stripping ratio. I'll just haul it up the hill to the east, to the right, and put it on the pad. And as an observation, there's no jungle here. There's no glaciers to cross. There's no muskeg to get bogged down in. I mean, this is good conditions, close to infrastructure. 2 or 3 miles over, there's Highway 93, 4-lane road in that section at least, and really a lot of things going for it in terms of infrastructure and ease of access, year-round capability of working, etc.
Okay, so what I'd like to do is I'd like to zoom into what we are calling Area 4, and we can take a look at this in a little bit more detail. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, again, take off our surface topography. So what you should be able to see here is the areas that are mineralized that are shown at the surface. You can see these here in the oranges and the reds. So as Joe was saying, this is going to be fairly easy for us to get to and get out. It is outcropping at surface, which makes mining a whole lot easier for us. So if I turn this off, we can come and we can zoom in here just slightly. And so you can get an idea of where the areas that we're going to be working with are. And the one thing that we had talked about, and I'm going to let Joe talk a little bit more about it, is we have done a preliminary pit design. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to turn that on so you can take a look at that now.
Barb, can you zoom into the block model? I want to be able to show the participants what the block model looks like underground and to show how close near surface our mineralization is.
I can. And what I'd like to do with that is go through where the pits are, and then we'll rotate this thing up so you can look at it and you'll be able to see how close things are to the surface. Will that work for you? What we've done here is we created an economic pit, and the fancy term for that would be floating cone. So what happens with that is that a computer will go through and it will decide what is economic to mine based on the economic factors, tonnage, grade, the percent recovery, how close it is to the surface. And so what it will do here is it will design the pit based on those factors. And so you can see here we've got several areas where there are going to be several different pits that will be able to support the mining. One of the things what I'd like to do is let's turn the mineralization off so that you can get an idea of what's going on here. And so if I turn the mineralization off, you can see, I think, in a little bit more detail how these pits have been designed. So now what Mike wants to do is he wants you to see how close things are to the surface. What these lines are representing here is the surface topography with the pits inserted in them. So if I turn the mineralization back on and I just flip this up, you'll be able to get an idea of what's going to be mined and how close things are to the surface. Now there's another area that I can show you before we go on, which is a little bit further over, so just give me a second to get over into our area 2. And what you should be able to see here is that there again are some preliminary pits designed on the mineralization, but if we move this up, you'll see that some of these areas down here are going to be too deep for us to mine economically given the current price of gold. So this is something that we need to be aware of, and as mining progresses we will be reevaluating this so that we'll have an idea of what's going on, and we'll be redoing these designs as we get more information. So Mike, does that answer, or does that show people? Sure, I can do that. Like right here? Is that what you're wanting? We'll see what happens. Okay, there we go. Up close and personal. How's that? Okay. So that's what you're wanting to show, yes? All right. Perfect. So we've talked about.
Okay, Barbara, when you did the blocks on this, you were pretty conservative. You're using 50-foot search radius on their drill holes. That's leaving a lot of blanks, and there's a couple of points to be said for that. One is that in the field, when you have those blank spots between it, you're going to figure out the geology, and you're going to assume that there's constant mineralization that may or may not be economic. Right now, you're assuming it's all on economic, and there's a upside potential there that you will get economics in there. The other thing is as you're moving forward, drill on the property for the blast holes, etc. You'll start to explore those blanks and determine whether the door's in the blanks. And you mentioned earlier that you had found some additional drill hole information from the Arizona Bureau of Geology, or Arizona Geological Survey. That I hope will fill in some of those blanks as well. Can you zoom in on that area? Okay, and maybe rotate it, Barbara, so that we can see those cones showing up, your floating cones from that software package. Okay, in the background here, you can see some of the cones laid out by the floating cone software package. In the field, you'll start filling in that area between the cones. Some of it will be waste and be hauled to the waste dump, but some of it will end up being ore. It's the conservativeness of the computer program, smoothing out from drill hole to drill hole. And as I said previously, a 50-foot search radius is pretty conservative. I've seen lots at 80 and 100, and so I would expect some upside in this area.
Absolutely. Joe, I think that's a good point. And one of the things, if I can just zoom way in, what you guys can get an idea of is, do you see these blocks here? Each of these blocks are 15 feet by 15 feet by 15 feet. So it gives you an idea of what it is that we're working with. So that should be able to give you a bit of a visual here as to the mineralization, and you can see here we've got a hole that's coming down through it and the blocks that were created as a result of the assays here. So does anyone else have something that they'd like to see while I'm still in here in this model, or are we done and we can go? So let's switch back into our presentation, and if you could bear with me, if this works, that's great. If not, I'll have to reset it. So let's see what happens. All right, that looks like it worked. So we've now had a chance to review what we are currently doing and the software that we're using to work with this. Again, this is the mind model that we are working with and that we're using to create it. It's not an artistic rendering or a drawing of it. It's actually the real stuff. So what you have seen, so now what we're doing is we're looking a bird's eye view, we're looking straight down to the deposit. And so this area here is area 4 that we've talked about. This area here is area 3. Again, here's our area 2. The holes that we've used to define our mineralization are shown here in green. And they're a total of 144 holes, or 40 holes. What we've been able to do is we have been able to find the location of 44 additional holes that we're going to use to refine the resource. And let's see, so what I can tell you is we're trying to increase the mineralized material of this deposit. I can also tell you that our original numbers that we came up with were greater than the historic figures that had been reported, but they were not Guide 7 compliant, so we could not report them and we couldn't use them. With the additional information, we can now justify the time and expense to upgrade the existing resource and to publish a Guide 7 technical report. There will be 3 of us that will be working on the resource. Joe will be the lead author for the tech report as he's independent from the company, and I will be the second author on the report. We also need to do this to support Mike, who is working on obtaining financing. Now, something that I do need you all to understand is that I'm using the term resource. That's a term that is not recognized by the SEC. It's a term that a lot of us are using when we're working with creating Canadian compliant resource evaluations, but this is not recognized by the SEC. So I just need to caution you all there. So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to pass this over to Joe Bardswich, our mining consultant, who's going to update you on the status of the permitting. So Joe?
Well, permitting is often considered a dirty word, but the reality is that in this country it is the law, and if we're a nation of laws, then we have no choice but to do it in a proper way. A lot of people sort of get frozen in their tracks when they start thinking permitting, but my attitude is, hey, we're Americans, we can put a man on the moon, then we can mine in an environmentally safe manner. The challenge is to mesh safety with efficiency to get the right product done at the right time. When we started looking at the whole schedule of permitting, we analyzed the recent changes in the law. As an example, the Clean Water Act, Section 404, is administered by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, was amended on July 2nd, 2015. The chances of there being other changes moving forward are there, and the longer it takes for that permitting period, the longer, or the more chance that there will be other changes. We did an analysis of the pros and cons of short-term permitting, followed by multiple stages of permitting versus a one-time full permitting effort. And with heap bleaching, this gets a little complicated. If you put 1,000 tons of ore on the pad today, it will take the 74 days the lab results show to get the gold out. But it also takes the time that is evolved while you wet that heap and as the leach solutions move through the heap. And when you're done with that, you need to neutralize the heap. All of this takes time with a full 24-hour, 7-day-per-week schedule with a minimum of 2 people on site as per our MSHA regulations. So if we put 1,000 tons on the pad today and another 1,000 tomorrow, we've doubled our revenue and only added 1 extra day of costs. So the objective is to keep things moving forward, offset by the risks and the knowledge of risks. As we move forward, there will be problems. The situation is that you solve the problems. You don't sit and ponder. And so in the end, we concluded that for a project of this size, the most efficient plan would be to permit the complete project. Construction and expansion could then be done after the permit is in place, in stages, utilizing revenue from the initial stage to finance the expansion of the heap leach pad and the pit and the subsequent phases, all meshing into one. Next slide, please. So this slide is a listing of not only the major permits, but tasks that are prerequisite to the permit issuance. As an example, before you do your mining plan of operations, you have to do a heap design. So that heap design is not a permitting per se, but it is a necessary task before going forward. Some tasks are sequential, that is, such as the heap design preceding the mining plan of operations. And some tasks do not necessarily have to be done in sequence. Some tasks are on a critical path. And by critical path, I mean if you delay that critical path, you delay the whole project. Other tasks not on the critical path could become critical if they are ignored. So a little bit of engineering and forethought has to go into that. We chose the critical path as being the BLM MPO, followed by the NEPA analysis. So we can't do the NEPA analysis till the BLM mine plan of operation is complete. We can't do construction till the NEPA analysis is complete, etc. Basically, the NEPA analysis, the NEPA is the National Environmental Policy Act. It requires a review with public input of all disturbances on federal lands. As we proceed with the NEPA process, there will be a review of the mine plan of operations, followed by an EA, environmental assessment, if there are only mitigatable disturbances. In other words, disturbance that can be mitigated and not be a permanent disturbance. Or an EIS, environmental impact statement, if there are unmitigatable disturbances. Tasks like the Aquifer Protection Permit, APP, or the Air Quality Permit or exemption are not on the critical path. But if they're not completed in a timely manner, they could hold up the whole project and therefore would become part of the critical path. Next slide, please. Looking at this development timeline, the permitting that we just talked about is one of the main components. We cannot start the construction until that NEPA is done. We cannot do the permitting until the first level of project financing is done. Engineering and environmental studies must be completed before the completion of the mine plan of operations. Economic studies are ongoing as the price of gold changes, as the price of critical elements like chemicals, etc., changes. We'll keep an eye on that to ensure that we're not getting behind the 8 ball in terms of costs and economics. There's some test drilling to be done to provide additional material from depth to go into the met testing to ensure that as we get down into the heap, we're still going to be able to have satisfactory recoveries. And then prior to the construction, followed by the production, is a very important item, the project financing. And there'll be more about that later. Next stage, please, Barbara. We borrowed this slide from another source, and basically it sort of 5 key things to making a successful mining company. We've already talked about the deposit. I think Mike said earlier that we're sort of up there with about 4 or 5 other companies listed on the pinks that already have a deposit, a bona fide deposit, etc. Moving forward, we will not be successful if we do not put a major effort towards safety and a major effort towards environmental protection. I've said to some people in regards to other clients that I have, a quick way to kill a company is have a major accident involving personal injury or fatality, and for all intents and purposes, you're out of business. The same thing if you have an environmental disaster. What keeps everything together is the quality of the people involved. So the deposit has been advanced based on the work done by the staff of International Star. As we move forward, both safety and the environment will become bigger issues again, requiring top effort by management. And the fifth leg down here is capital. And without capital, we're pretty well at a standstill. This is a daunting task, and I think International Star is fortunate to have a leader like Michael Shea on board. So I'll turn this over to Michael and his area of expertise.
Thank you, Joe, and that was an excellent job of bringing everybody up to speed and going through the processes that we need to go through to bring the Van Diemen into production. What I'd like to do is share my personal thoughts on the gold market. Barb, next slide. As you can see at the top, current bearish sentiment. Have we hit the bottom? The gold market is extremely volatile. It has gone up, it's gone down, and currently we're in a downward movement. Gold prices, again, from my opinion, have been impacted by the strengthening dollar, strong equity markets, potential interest rate hikes in the U.S. and lower China purchases. And if I may just expound on those slightly. Gold historically has been a flight for security, flight to safety, investment. With the strengthening dollar, the strong equity markets in the U.S., and the potential interest rate hike, it has not been as attractive as a investment as has been in the past. This has been coupled with the fact that China, for the first time since 2009, has released its gold reserves. And quite frankly, while no one believes what the Chinese say about their gold reserves, their reserves since 2009 have only increased 60-some%, and many analysts thought it should be substantially higher. This has led to a sell-off in the gold market. Now, where I believe that there is potential for improvement in the price of gold is a market correction. Everybody's familiar with the stock market. It goes up, it screams up, and then it has a correction and it goes down. Money flows out of the market and potentially into the gold sector. The strong dollar itself is a two-edged sword. Yes, it helps the U.S., but it damages or impacts the ability of exporters to export their products because they're more expensive. Additionally, high-cost gold mines have closed, leading to a smaller supply. Obviously, what's going on throughout the world in terms of regional conflicts cause people to want to invest in a safe mineral like gold. And what people may not know is that India, combined with China, are the two largest buyers of gold, and India continues to buy at record rates. So, well, on the one hand, you may have people saying gold's going down to $800. You have people saying that we're going to a gold-backed currency. The truth is probably somewhere in between, but we believe that there will be an increase, that we have hit the bottom, and that by the time we come into production, we certainly hope that gold prices will rise. Next slide, please. Okay. So mining is capital intensive. There's significant upfront cost. We've made every progress of moving the Van Diemen forward within our respective areas of expertise. We went roughly 1 year, probably more, without any dilution. We've done as much as we can within our skill sets to move the project forward. We've made some very difficult strategic decisions, primarily the fact that we are going to put a heap leach processing facility on on the Van Diemen. This has led to the need for substantial engineering and additional permitting cost, but we believe that it is well worth the investment, and quite frankly, it is the only way at this point in time where gold is trading that this project is economic. The addition of Joe Bargewich, again, I can't underestimate it. It's been a significant leap forward for us in being able to really put numbers together to do the planning that we need. He's got an excellent relationship with the Bureau of Land Management as well as other contractors. And having just gone through this with the Moss mine, there's no one that is more capable of allowing us to move this project forward and do so using current cost. Expenses have been kept to a minimum. Money raised has gone towards the project and only the project. I have on here management has received no compensation. That's inaccurate. To date, since we took this over in October of 2013, the management team has received in aggregate $8,000 of compensation. Obviously, we're not getting paid. Every dollar is going into the project. And the project, we do have obligations. We have to make BLM payments once a year, which is approximately $10,000. And we do have to make lease payments to Aquesta twice a year in the amount of $10,000. We have paid those out of pocket in the past. But given where we are today, we are at an inflection point, and we need significant capital. And this is where some people may have misunderstood, and maybe I didn't communicate properly on the radio show. When I stated that we cannot finance this project out of equity, what I meant was we can't finance the whole project or the majority of the project out of equity. Estimated cost to achieve full permitting is $700,000 alone. Once we get permitted, we need to put up a bond of $1.2 million. Obviously, with those type of numbers, as well as the build out, unless we start trading at $20 or $50 a share, there is no way that we can do that. So we can't finance the project with share issuances when we're trading down in the trips, which is, again, severely undervalued. Next slide, please. Capital raising. Management recognizes the necessity to raise capital, as I just mentioned. We've taken steps to strengthen the team. We've identified additional mineral potential. We are in the process of completing a full business plan reflecting the strong economics of the project. We will be interviewing a real investor relations firm that will raise our visibility, broaden our investor base, make introductions to brokers, funds, and retail investors. And here I have to state, we have not done a good enough job of letting the investment community know that we are a real junior mining company with a real bona fide project near surface, near-term production. And I would challenge anybody to find more than a handful, maybe 5, trading in the OTC markets that have the team, that have done the exploration work, and have the plan, and actually are working towards putting a real gold mine into production. And this is the message that we need to get broadcast so that people take a look at us and see how undervalued we are and attract additional investors with hopes of a rising share price. With the completion of the formal business plan, it will allow management to make presentations to a number of different sources: royalty financing firms, streaming payment options, angel investors, joint ventures, alternative financing structures. And I would mention that when we get permitted, this project will have tremendous value, and I am not afraid towards selling the project at that point. You'll see that many junior mining companies advance a project to a particular stage only to have a much larger company come in and take over the project, invest in the project, farm in, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not against that whatsoever. What we're here to do is to minimize the dilution and to provide shareholder value. And these are the things that we plan on doing in the next 3 months to secure financing. Barb, next slide. This is something I put together. I just wanted to show you where average market cap for a junior gold company is. And this is based on in situ reserves in ground. You can see that the average is $28 an ounce. For ILST, $6 an ounce. Again, just comparing it to real junior mining companies that have resources like us that will demonstrate the disconnect between where we trade and where other companies trade. Barb, next, please. This is what I call the reality slide. Investing in junior mining companies is extremely risky. There's no doubt about it, and I don't care whether you're investing in the OTC market, the TSXV, the TSX, whatever the case may be, the AIM. It is extremely risky. International Stars acquired the Van Diemen project, which is a bona fide deposit, mitigating a good portion of the risk. Your management has made significant progress with nominal capital and is dedicated to bringing the Van Diemen into production. We've assembled a solid team, and with the assistance of professional mining contractors, developed a conceptual plan and layout with estimated costs and economics. We will make every effort to raise alternative capital. There are no insurances. Do I believe I can do this? Yes, and it will be done in stages. First thing is working towards money for getting us to the permitting phase, and then working on the bonding and the build out of the processing facility. But it is going to take substantial time, and it is a high-risk proposition. Until we get to the point where I can arrange alternative financing, the company must remain reliant on funding from equity issuances. Our current outstanding is $662 million, with an authorized share count of 780, leaving little room to effectuate the plan. The board and management, we've discussed different share structures. We did consider a reverse split. However, during this period of time where we're searching for alternative financing, we thought it is in the best interest of shareholders not to do a reverse split, but to increase the authorized share count by $220 million with a new AS of 1 billion shares. Barb, next slide. As you can see, our market cap is dismal, severely undervalued. There's not much to say on that. Barb, please. Summary. Barb, next slide. In summary, ILST has a bona fide deposit, and I can't stress that enough, with a real potential for development. Requires a strong permitting effort and considerable engineering refinement prior to production. The main point I wanted to drive home here is you've seen the block models, you've seen the drilling, near surface, the pit designs. This is not your desert dirt scam. This is a real mining project that can be brought into production. The U.S. has been the #1 mineral producer for approximately 100 years. Arizona has been #1 or #2 producer in the U.S. And Mojave County is probably the most pro-mining county anywhere. It's not a large deposit, but it fits within our criteria and skill set to be able to bring this in to production with a nominal cost relative to other projects and quick timeline, again, relative to other projects. We're dedicated, we're capable. We've put an enormous amount of time and effort, again, for no compensation. And we're excited about moving this project forward, and we will make every endeavor to bring more attention to the company from the investment community and to continue updates on a more frequent basis than we had about how and what we're doing. And lastly, I'll just say I do appreciate all the support from shareholders. It's been a bumpy road, but I think that the future is bright, and I look forward to providing our results as we move forward. So with that, I'll open it up for questions. And Barb, next slide.
Thanks, Mike. We're now going to begin answering the questions submitted during today's presentation. So Mike is going to be the one that's taking the questions now. Mike?
In case people did not hear that question, the question was regarding the increase of the OS. What's it going to be used for? The increase in the authorized, and I hope I don't have to use it all, is going to be for the project. It won't go towards compensation, but we do need to continue to have the support of professionals like Joe Bartwich. We do need to continue to move on permitting, and as importantly, fortunately, I'm close to New York City and I can get there for presentations, but I may need to travel to other cities to raise capital, and that is an expense. So yes, the AS is being raised by $220 million. Again, I hope I don't have to use it, but every penny will be spent towards going towards forwarding, moving the project forward.
All right. On behalf of ILST and our presenters, I'd like to thank you for joining us today, and have a great rest of your day.